In the midst of the industrial landscape of a Kent dockyard, there lies a walled garden. This neglected scrub was once a highly manicured status symbol for the captains of industry who led Britain's battle for maritime supremacy. But 2 centuries of neglect have taken their toll. Our quest is to unlock the secrets of this once splendid retreat, and by piecing together the evidence, we can start to reawaken the slumbering garden.
The Lost Gardens team has come to the historic dockyards in Chatham, Kent, and my first impressions are that this is the least likely place to find any kind of garden.
The historic dockyard, for centuries a bustling and strategic naval base on the River Medway, is now an 80-acre museum site dedicated to the art of shipbuilding. But the dockyard isn't just a museum. For some, it's home.
Just inside the perimeter of the dockyard is this row of handsome early Georgian houses, and behind them, across an alley, is a corresponding row of walled gardens. And it's behind this one, number 7, Officers' Terrace, that we're going to find our lost garden.
This is going to be a big job, this one.
The team is already hard at work. Anne-Marie Powell, our hard landscaper, will be coordinating the restoration. And Dr. Toby Musgrave, our plants and garden historian, will be in charge of researching the garden to discover what we need to put back.
Hi. Hello. Oh, hello.
Hello.
The first job is to measure up and assess whether what's left here holds any clues.
We've got a Georgian house, which might give us a date. I've been having a look round. We've got some metal edging here, so there's definitely beds and borders and this lawn area.
What's that lot doing up there?
They're the geophysical team. They've come in to do their probing to see if there's any evidence underneath the ground, and they should have their report in about an hour or so.
I've been finding out quite a lot as well. I mean, this garden is scheduled as an ancient monument, which means archaeologically it's a site of massive national importance. So I'm aware that anything we've got to do has got to be in conjunction with English heritage, which ultimately means that it's going to have to be passed by the Secretary of State.
So it means that you're going to have to do it properly, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
No skiving.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yep. Well, I need to get after the database. The team have been setting up. They've been bashing the phones already, trying to get some information together. So I need to find out what they're doing. And it's also in the nice and warm. So if I give you that, I'll see you later.
All right, see you later.
Right, so let's get measuring, because we've got archaeologists coming. So we need to get this done.
What am I measuring here?
Measure down to the bed
Just
there.
from here?
Yeah, please. And keep it nice and tight.
Okay.
Right.
Our database area has been set up in the dining room of number 7, and our team of social history and horticultural researchers are pulling together information to enable Toby to arrive at a date for our restoration. Their research will culminate in an accurate garden design and planting plan, and our job will be to turn that into a real living garden. But Anne-Marie and I can already see problems.
I'll tell you what strikes me about this garden is that we've never done a garden before that is completely enclosed. Garden on either side, road at either end.
Yeah.
We're completely
I know. And access is going to be a nightmare. Plus, we've got quite a small space and a lot of people coming in
How
to
many
actually work on the
volunteers
garden.
have you
About 20. And then we've got our own team,
Yeah.
and then all of us as well, popping in and out. So it means that I'm going to have to be very organised.
Back at the database, Toby has found his first piece of information.
Well, going with this idea that this was a Georgian house, the team behind me have been cracking on, and we got in touch with the Public Record Office in Kew, and they've come up trumps. They've supplied us copies of 2 maps, one dated 1719 and the second dated 1755. And when you compare the two, there's some very interesting results. On the 1755 map, here we've got the Commissioner's house and garden at the end here. We've got the big wall coming down here with these 2 gazebo-y belvedere things. The wall at the back of the garden's another one there. And this is the row of houses in our gardens, and we're number 7. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that is our garden and our house in 1755. It's got a central path with 6 beds. If you compare it with the 1719 map, here's the Commissioner's house and garden here. You can see there are these 2 belvederes here connected by this long wall. So they're there. You've got this, which is the outlines or the construction of our house, number 7 on the left here. And these 3 lines here are obviously the dividing garden walls. So we know that this garden dates after 1719 and was definitely in place by 1755. But what we need to do is find some more evidence and pin that date down, and also see if there's evidence for post-1755 garden. But this is a fantastic start, and so early in the day as well.
Back in the garden, the geophysical scan has turned up some kind of feature buried several layers down.
Right, what we're looking at here is a section through the ground. Towards the top, it's very, very complex. The material there is probably a fill material of some sort, but underneath that we've got a very strong horizon there.
What's that?
It's well, it's cut off at both edges, so I think it may be possibly a path.
But it looks pretty deep, actually. How deep do you think that is?
It's about 1.4, 1.5 metres down, quite a long way down, with a lot of material above it.
Right, well, I'm going to get the archaeologists in to dig a trench, and we'll see if that is right. Path would be good.
Okay.
Excellent.
But before we can dig any trenches, we have to find a way of getting the excavation equipment into the garden. And there's really only one solution. We've been joined by the team of archaeologists working on behalf of English heritage.
Do you feel comfortable about these diggers doing your work?
Yes, I think so. I think, you know, as long as we watch them carefully, because you can't, you know, use all your energy on getting the rubbish out. You save your strength for the real archaeology underneath.
The garden is designated an ancient monument, and we can only work here if we fulfill strict conditions imposed by the government. We must do a thorough archaeological investigation, record what we find, and then cover up any archaeology discovered to preserve it. Only then can we build on top. And we must have an archaeologist on site at all times.
Right, move back. Look it down there.
Under the supervision of Leslie Howes and her team, our first task is to dig test trenches to find out exactly what's below the soil. One trench is crossways near the bottom of the garden, where geophysics think that they may have found evidence of a path. The second is a lengthways trench, which could tie up with the central path marked on Toby's map.
Got a date for the garden. One map shows that it was definitely being started in 1719 and it was here by 1755. But I've got some architectural plans which show the terrace here. This is the plan and upright of 2 of the officers' houses at Chatham. I think this one is probably ours, looking at the overall plan. Dated January the 28th, 1728.
Yeah.
But even more attractive is this, showing the facades of the whole row of houses.
Ah, yes.
And this is quite interesting because it names who lived in the house. So we've got storekeeper in the end house, clerk of the survey, master rope maker, clerk of the rope yard, surgeon, clerk of the check, and our house, the master shipwright.
It's interesting you found that, because I was just wandering around and I bought a guidebook. And sure enough, there's that map.
All right.
In the guidebook there, and it says 1722 to 1733.
Yeah, in future I'll just go and buy the guidebook. Much easier.
Probably quicker. Probably quicker.
Well, at least they tie up anyway.
Yeah, it's good.
So we've got a name who you might be able to find out some more about what
Master Shipwright, who he was then. But before I have a chance to pursue the shipwright, the garden gives up its first clue. 10 years ago, Leslie did test excavations in some of the other gardens in the terrace, so she already has an idea of what to look for.
So what have we found, Leslie?
Well, this could be the foundation of one of the paths. See that they...
This line along here.
That's right, and you can probably see it clearer. You see where the soil changes. You've got the chalk, yeah?
Yeah.
And then you've got the clay. So this will be the foundation.
Now, how can you be so confident that that's a path and not a wall?
Previous excavations in the other gardens, this is what we came up with, that the paths were founded on chalk and then gravelled over, rolled hogging or gravel.
And you think that all the gardens would have had the same sort of style of construction?
There seems to be, yes, like one contractor doing the
Right.
doing the lot. And there's some books, 18th century books, that suggest that chalk is actually a very good foundation for paths.
Right.
It stops the worms coming up through the gravel.
Leslie's find confirms what the geophysical survey suggested. The original garden is deeply buried. For us, that means it's safe to start removing the surface rubble. Volunteers from Hadlow Agricultural College have arrived to help us shift the tons of debris that have accumulated in the bottom end of the neglected garden.
We've got loads of helpers here for the archaeologists, and they're cracking on at a real pace.
Too many? They're getting on top of each other?
Not at the moment. We'll address that later if that starts to become a problem, but no, it's fine.
Yeah.
Got an exciting find for you from the database. I've got you a map from 1774 which shows our garden perfectly here, look. This is
Wow.
the house, number 7. We've got steps coming up the middle, a lower terrace, another set of steps to a middle terrace, and then a third set of steps to this upper terrace with the beds marked out and everything.
That's what the
Fantastic.
archaeologists are finding.
Really?
They're
Now, I tell you-
finding terraces.
Excellent.
Can I tell you what the archaeologist told me? And maybe you know about this now. Do you know about the model?
No.
The archaeologist told me, quite bluntly, said, oh, it's like the model. And I said, what model? She said, the model of Chatham, 1770s, that shows the details of all the gardens.
Wow.
Where is it?
It's at Greenwich. And they've excavated all but 2 of the gardens, and they exactly match up to the model.
Right. Well,
So if that model matches to that, we know we've got a garden that was at least made by the 1770s and was being maintained, you know, in the way that it was intended to be. If it is 1770, how does that affect you and the work that you're doing?
Well, I imagine, and the geophysical guy, he told me that that would mean that the garden is way down below the surface of the soil, so that means vast amounts of topsoil that will get out, so I'm going to have to think about that.
So, we're starting to build up the history of our garden. In 1719, it was merely an outline marked on this map. By 1755, both house and garden are well established, and on this 1774 plan, we see formal beds with a central path and central steps leading into the garden. But at some stage, the steps have been concreted over, and the entrance moved to the corner. Very few 18th century town gardens survive today, but maps of the time provide an insight into their design. Rows of walled gardens, uniform in size and with slight variations on a simple layout. Behind imposing town houses, the gardens all seem to include wide paths of stone or gravel defining the planting beds, which are usually oval or oblong and enclosed by a low clipped box hedge. Our 1774 plan points to just this kind of design. And if the model at Greenwich matches the plan, we'll have an extraordinary amount of detail on this garden. This will allow us to attempt one of the few accurate restorations of an 18th century town garden in this country. It's an exciting prospect, but the bones of our garden are deeply buried. To reveal our 3 terrace levels, we'll have to remove 1.5 metres of topsoil. And for that, you need the right equipment.
To get rid of this amount of soil, there really is only one answer, and that's a conveyor belt. It's going to take all of the topsoil we don't need up and over the wall.
However, before we can get the topsoil out, we need to remove over 220 years' worth of garden debris. At the bottom end of the garden, the archaeologists have thrown a spanner in the works. They've uncovered a set of steps, and a fierce debate is raging as to whether they're original or not.
looks like stone or some. It's certainly got a fronting on it.
That's a cement fronting.
Fronting.
But there, you see that one up there has got a gap, so whether they've filled in on it.
I mean, what kind of evidence have you found in other gardens or steps?
Steps, well, I think they should be stone.
They should be stone?
They should be stone, yes.
Well,
Right.
here you are, stone steps, lining
up the
with
middle.
your plan of 1774,
Yeah.
straight up the middle.
Nothing to, well, at this stage we can't say they're original, but we certainly can't discount it. As I say, I think they're a little bit, unless they're the end of the original steps coming up from down below, leading up to the path, and then you'd have your beds on either side as per the plan.
I'm not convinced that these are part of our garden that we're restoring to be honest. Because to me, they don't relate at all to the plan that we've got. So I'd like to actually get some tapes out and start measuring it to scale. And I'm sure probably Leslie would like to do that too.
If we find that the steps are part of the original garden, the 1774 plan might be inaccurate. And if that's the case, it'll have a major impact on our restoration. But if we find the steps are not original, we can just record and remove them.
This top one's concrete as well.
While Leslie and her team start searching for the necessary proof, Anne-Marie's boys have one final task for the day. Removing the shell of an old, dilapidated greenhouse, which we're confident is not part of the original garden. It's been an extraordinary first day. It's now so dark we can't even see what we're doing, and it's jolly cold. But looking back on it, I don't think we've ever achieved so much in the first day of a Lost Gardens. We've established that there's this model, which to me is fantastic, a plan that goes with it, and tomorrow Toby's going to try and see that model. Anne-Marie's going to continue the excavations. The archaeologists will hopefully record it all as we go along, and they found one or two surprising things, like those steps. That's confused us, and no one quite knows how they're going to fit in. And I want to find out tomorrow who lived here, what sort of people they were, and how they used this garden.
Well, at the start of a bitterly cold second morning here at Chatham Historic Dockyards, we're feeling pretty good because, on balance, yesterday was a brilliant day. We established that there is a garden underneath this soil that is likely to date from the 1770s. There's a map dated 1774 which shows the exact layout, and there's a model made in the 1770s that also corroborates that. So if we can make those connections tight, then that's the garden that we're going to restore.
The archaeologists are confident that the steps we found yesterday are not original. They were bedded in Portland cement, which is a 19th century introduction, so later than our restoration. They've been recorded and removed. To comply with the conditions laid down by English Heritage, all of the findings are being recorded, and once this is done, we must cover over the archaeology with a thin layer of topsoil to preserve it. Only then can we start to build on top. Although work in the garden is going fantastically well, we have hit our first major frustration. The model of Chatham Dockyard is currently in storage at Greenwich Maritime Museum, so it's impossible to bring it to our garden for comparison. However, Greenwich has supplied us with a set of black and white photographs which shows some interesting features.
So this is one plan which is very similar to the plan we had yesterday. So this is an overall view of the 12 gardens, and that's our garden here. And compared to the plan from the same year, 1774, they're very, very similar. But there are some differences. The primary one being each of the gardens has this sort of cabin-like structure that goes over the top of the steps, which isn't marked on the plan, which is intriguing. I feel it's almost like a sort of the rear cabin, the captain or admiral's cabin on a ship. It's got this sort of upright structure that covered over that central set of steps that came up from the street level.
Are you proposing that we move the steps? Because I just think it would be impossible. It's a tunnel, steps going up, a structure. I mean, that's phenomenal.
Right, so it's a major building job.
Absolutely.
Rather than garden architecture.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we should put the steps back in. I mean, that's just taking things too far. But I think we could put a structure back there to give the garden its
some sort of
form.
structure would give it a focal point, wouldn't it? I mean, there are central paths all the way through these gardens.
Also, it signals the ghost of the steps. I mean, we were acknowledging that was there, the entrance to the garden was there.
If we're going to put in a replacement structure, though, we have to check with English Heritage about this type of materials that they want to use and we can use.
Sure.
Using the photographs, we can build up a 3D image of our 1774 garden. Detached from the house, this long rectangular space clearly shows the 3 terrace levels, formal beds, and the unusual cabin-like structure. Using this information, Anne-Marie can start on her plan for our restoration. With a clear vision of our Georgian garden, it was time for me to find out who had lived in our terrace. So I went aboard HMS Cavalier to meet Richard Holdsworth from the Historic Dockyards Trust, who's an authority on Chatham Dockyard. So who would have been living in our officers' terrace? Was that naval officers or officers of the shipyard?
Yeah, it was for officers of the dockyard, the principal officers of the dockyard, and there were 12 of them, 6 slightly more senior than the others who had the larger houses, of which number 7's one. And they were people like the master shipwright and the clerk of the check, I suppose, the modern-day accountant, the storekeeper, the master attendants, who we now know as harbour masters. And they were really responsible for the main departments of the dockyard.
Would they stay here for years and years on end, or were they posted around?
They were posted around. Chatham, because it's the principal shipbuilding repair yard, is actually quite an influential place and an important place. And we can see quite a few go through Chatham as part of a career path that took them right to the top.
So it means that it's likely that no one lived in that house for more than a few years at any one time. It was unlikely to be someone who made it their lifetime home.
Oh no! I mean,
Right.
we can see from the records that most officers stayed there for anywhere between 3 and 5 years, maybe
Right.
a bit longer. Some died in post.
So it was a billet, really?
Yes,
A glorified billet?
in effect, yes.
Yeah. So, if number 7 was only ever a temporary home to the officers, how important would the garden have been to them? Well, the Chatham Dockyard of 1774 would have been a pretty noisy place. At that time, Britain was a leading maritime power, and Chatham employed over 2,000 men, all designing, building, and maintaining huge warships. In fact, 9 years before our restoration date, one of the most famous vessels of all was built here. Nelson's flagship, the Victory. It was designed by master shipwright Thomas Slade, and he would almost certainly have lived in our terrace. The officers were powerful men who oversaw the entire running of the dockyard, but most of them would have started as humble apprentices, working their way up the career ladder over the decades. After enjoying the noise and dirt of the dockyard since boyhood, a move into the elegant officers' terrace would have been seen as a huge status symbol. Such a large garden, sheltered and secluded right at the edge of the dockyard, would have been a welcome haven of privacy and tranquility. However, for us, it's anything but at the moment. It's midday and the rubble clearing seems to be never-ending. The work can only go as fast as our conveyor belt, which, to say the least, is rather temperamental. Pulling together all the evidence we've found so far, Anne-Marie has come up with a scale plan for our garden.
This is how I expect the garden should look on Friday. So you can see we've got 3 very distinct different levels here in terracing.
Although it's a very difficult, complicated job, it's quite a simple end product, isn't it? Quite a straightforward design.
It is a straightforward design. It's really, really formal, and that seems to fit in with me to the whole area. I mean, it's a naval base, and it seems quite a regimented, formal garden, doesn't it? But it's a lot of work.
Based on information gained from the model, Anne-Marie's design involves removing enough topsoil to re-establish the 3 terraces, which will be cut through by 2 new walls, each punctuated with a set of steps. The formal planting beds will be separated by wide gravel areas, and beds will run along the foot of the walls. The new structure echoes the original entrance to the garden. It'll be covered with a lead roof, and we've chosen trellis side panels because the archaeologists have found traces of Georgian trellis in the other gardens. Finally, we'll erect a trellis fence to mark the original back wall of the garden because it's been extended by 3 metres since the 1770s. Back in the garden, as the day draws to a close, the clearing has at least moved on to the topsoil, and the conveyor belt is coping rather better. The footings for the first wall have been dug, and so tomorrow, Anne-Marie will be ready to build the wall and create the first terrace.
Right, what do we want to achieve today?
Well, there's loads to achieve today. I mean, we've got this terrace area here. We managed to get in by the skin of our teeth the footings for the first wall here. That'll be good to get that up because we'll see the second terrace laid out just there.
Right.
But there's loads to be done. I want to get the beds all marked out down here today. We've got an arrival of hogging, so that means edgings to beds put in, you know, the walls going up. There's loads to do.
8 bricklayers have joined the team today, and their first job is to assess how many courses high the wall should be.
Take it down. Do you want to check the width of the bed first?
And the Hadlow College volunteers also have a busy morning ahead, deciphering Anne-Marie's plan so they can accurately mark out the positions of the beds.
7 metres 70.
I'm putting together the plant list for the garden and finding out some information about how the plants are arranged in the beds. And we're very privileged to have been lent these fantastic books by the Royal Horticultural Society. They're from the 1700s and we've got to take great care of them. And they just give us a wealth of information. This is a select collection of 100 plates of the most beautiful and exotic British flowers. So this is a top 100 effectively. So this we can use to source our ornamental plants. We've got plants such as feverfew I've marked in here. This is a native to England, used as a medicine. And we've got things like Arbutus unida, which is native to Ireland, the strawberry tree, which again is an ornamental tree that we could perhaps train against the walls as they did back then. One of my favourites is this very little book here. This is the Beauties of Flora Displayed, and a gentleman and lady's pocket companion to the flowering kitchen garden. And this is a real gem because it has a picture of how the plants were arranged in the beds. And it shows that they put the tallest plant in the middle and then slope them down either side or from the back of the wall to the front. And they call it theatrical planting. Each plant is positioned so you can see the beauties of the plant, and there's a lot of bare soil in between, so very different to the way that we plant and approach our gardens today. This book is another of my favourites. This is The City Gardener from 1722, written by Thomas Fairchild, gardener of Hoxton. And just a lovely book with these people in their period dress and agaves in tubs. And this one has this lovely pull-out section just here, which shows how trees were trained against walls. And we can use this both for the fruit trees and also for the ornamental plants. So again, much more information about how the plants were grown. For what fruit we want to plant, we've got this book. This is a German book. And again, these wonderful watercolour pictures. This is Morello cherries that we've got at the top here, and a whole page of different types of cherry. And this one here is just a commoner garden fig. And looking at some of the other gardens, there are a lot of figs growing in those gardens, so obviously a plant that was grown. But taking all this information together means that we can put back into our garden not only the right plants, but make sure they go in the right way. And without these books, we couldn't do it. So these are a fantastic resource.
If you come up now...
The owner of number 7, James Brosnan, hasn't been in his garden since Monday morning.
We're actually getting it marked out, at last. Which is excellent to say that we're right in the middle of our build, basically. I'm pleased to see this. I mean, this here, you can see where they're marking it out, is going to be a structure. So it would have been where the original steps were coming up.
So will this be a path?
There'll be a central path going all the way up right through the middle of the garden. And we'll be going up some steps here at this point onto terraced area number 2.
The height of these walls, is that as high as it's going to go?
It's going to go, we've got 9 courses going in. It's going to be at about 1 metre high. Yeah. Back in the day, they wouldn't have used blockwork like we have here, but that will give you a lot more strength. But we are laying them traditionally on lime mortar, and we're using bricks that have been specified, you know, as perfectly all right to use by English Heritage. They look very new at the moment, but they will weather. What do you think? We're halfway through.
Well, somebody said it's
garden restoration goes from green to brown to green, and it's been brown since Monday morning. So I hope that by Friday evening, if the weather improves, we might see a bit of green, which would be nice.
So do I. I hope so too. I think we will.
Good.
Well, one good sign is that all the clearance has finished, which means that the conveyor belt, which we loved and hated, is on the way out, just as the trellis panels for the central structure are on the way in. These have been approved by English Heritage as appropriate for an 18th century town garden. Although surviving town gardens are rare, there is a prime example in the Georgian city of Bath. Behind the stately facade of the circus, excavation work was carried out in 1985. Under this conventional lawn, archaeologists uncovered a simple Georgian garden, which has since been restored. The layout revealed a long rectangular shape with wide gravel paths around small symmetrical beds. This restoration illustrates a typical Georgian planting scheme, with lots of bare soil, a few specimen plants and trellis work, all elements to be incorporated into our garden. But we still have a long way to go. Although the team have achieved an incredible amount, everyone is exhausted, and the cold, wet weather is sapping our energy.
So literally like 3 down there, 3 over that way. We'll get a couple up here.
But we'll have to continue for a few more hours yet, building the trellis structure and starting work on the second terrace wall. It's going to be a long night.
It's the morning of day 4 here at the historic dockyards at Chatham, and we've established that our lost garden is attached to this house, and it was lived in by a senior officer of the dockyard. We haven't been able to establish which person because it was lived in by a succession of different officers with different roles at different times. But the one thing they had in common was that they were all important, they were all powerful and very significant in the life of the dockyard. So the garden that they had behind this wall was important to them as a place of retreat. And we spent the last 3 days taking off the layers, ripping it apart to discover what was there. And what we've got to do now is put those layers back on and recreate a garden of 1774.
One of those layers, the trellis structure, is well underway, reflecting the old entrance to the garden.
Perfect fit. Look at that.
Good work, Al.
To keep the soil in place, each of the beds will be edged in metal, a material which of course was readily available in a Georgian dockyard.
We've just had the materials for the paths delivered. That's 40 sacks of hoggin, which is this clay-bound sub-layer, and then 16 sacks of gravel. Each sack weighs a ton. The lorry came along, plonked them down because this was the closest it could get. In order to get it into the garden, we're having to shovel it out the sacks, and this is almost impossible to dig into. Put it into a dumper, drive the couple of 100 yards to the gate, tip it onto the floor, and then shovel it into barrows, barrow it to the paths. 56 tons.
By my estimation, it takes 20 wheelbarrow loads to move 1 ton, which means we could be here until the middle of next week. But there are some advantages to restoring a garden in the middle of an industrial site. A friendly forklift driver takes pity on us.
got a garden. Everyone's been working really hard, and today we've got beds in, hogging paths laid, one brick wall complete, and another one complete up there too. We're going to be working our way further up here later on this evening and in the morning, and tomorrow there's no doubt we'll be planting.
The plants have just been delivered, and I love this little pocket of 18th century life in our compound with its generators and all that clutter and gear that we have here. And of course, this selection has been terribly carefully researched to be exactly right for our 1774 garden. And whilst there are obvious things like box cones there are all sorts of oddities, like feverfew, which in my garden at home is a weed, but dead right, and they would have planted that with care. And we've got figs here, which will grow up, would have been a delicacy then, much valued. Laurel is not something I'd ever think of planting in a town garden, but they would have prized it and valued it as much as the roses or some of the special fruits. What they would have used was loads of box edging. So we've got 2,000 Buxus subfruticosa, the dwarf box that will line all the beds, each one bare root, got to be looked after very carefully, each one planted with all the care of anything else in the garden. And I love the way that we have this link between our lives now in the 21st century and the lives of the people who lived and enjoyed that garden in 1774 through these plants.
Another invaluable link back to the past has been the writings of Moore and Abercrombie and their exhaustive companion, Every Man His Own Gardener. This gives descriptions of everything, from theatrical planting to how to lay out gravel paths. And with all the hogging done, we're now ready to follow their advice. For a neat, manicured finish that an officer would be proud of, the paths have to be raked over and rolled. And in the words of Moore and Abercrombie, twice or thrice a week will not be too often. And that will leave the garden in a fit state for planting tomorrow. It's early morning, and Toby and our plant researcher Michael Kerr are down in the compound sorting out the planting plan.
Hanging around, extra auriculas.
Right.
Although they're not.
How's it going?
Good.
Just trying to agree on where we're putting some of this stuff.
Any problems, any arguments, any fights?
Huge fights.
Enormous. You can see the bruises coming. No, it's going very well. I mean, what we're doing is we've got the structure, all the shrubs and the trees and what have you, and we're just putting the herbaceous stuff in where it should be going, so we know that we've got the right planting style, and we're putting the plants into groups for each bed. I'm going to stay down here and issue people plants, so they're going to take them up to Michael, and he's going to put them in the right place. There's no space for messing around in this. They've got to go in exactly the right place.
So there's no question of any of us using our own
Nope.
21st century creativity.
Absolutely not. Afraid not. This is a military
Exactly
precision.
as we dictate it.
Right.
You're putting yourself back into someone's mind in 1774, using the books and the information we have and making sure those beds are going to look like they were back then.
Our planting plan reflects the sparse Georgian style where each specimen is prized and displayed in isolation from its neighbour. The lower terrace will have a variety of ornamental roses, a mixed bed of lavender and Santolina, and passion flowers to clamber over the structure. The middle terrace features clumps of feverfew, and a variety of fruit trees and shrubs will fan out along the old walls. The top terrace will be filled with the colours of foxgloves, marigolds, and wild honeysuckle. The perfect mixture for our Georgian garden.
Let's get these climbers in.
The lower terrace plants, including the passion flower, are among the first to go, with 20 each of lavender and Santolina not far behind.
Yeah, when you get up there, Monty and Michael have got the planting plan, so they'll tell you where to lay them out. Don't feel enthusiastic and just start putting them any old places. They've got to go in the right places. So off you go.
A barrow of Virginia creeper will give colour, with mixed evergreens for structure and a couple of fan-trained fig trees.
Whoever's taken this lot down has got to leave it at the top, OK? So this is going to stay at the top of the garden because it's going behind the trellis.
The 12 laurel bushes will line the new trellis boundary at the top of the garden.
What are these?
2 apples.
2 apples.
1, 2, 3, 2.
Careful!
And the barrows keep coming. A total of 3,000 plants, but 2,000 of those plants are box edging, so they're the first to go in. The dense root structure will help to hold the soil in place. Moore and Abercrombie recommend placing the plants so near together as to form immediately a close compact edging without being too thick and clumsy. In other words, a low hedge. To give symmetry to the beds and to add height, we're putting in the 2 box cones. We have to suppress our 21st century instincts, which will be to fill these beds with plants. We must follow the Georgian aesthetic of sparse planting with lots of soil on show.
The bottom terrace has got the structural planting in now, so we can get the herbaceous stuff in, bring that in. While they're planting the herbaceous material, we've marked out the middle terrace, so that'll be planted. And when this stuff's planted and the herbaceous stuff's coming in for the middle terrace, we'll be getting on with the top terrace.
Sorry, what were they?
2 apples.
2 apples.
There are 16 fruit trees going in against the walls, including cherry, apricot, apple and...
Damson? Someone got the damson? One of the fruit trees. Damson, it's in between the 2 apricots there.
What we've got here is an apple, Ellison's orange, and we're growing it as an espalier. Now, when you grow espaliers, the horizontal growth has lots of fruit on it, but it's also quite weak growth, so it's grown on a very vigorous rootstock. So you've got this potentially vigorous tree, which we want to train that way. But it's a low wall, so we only want 2 tiers, and if you had a 10-foot wall, you could have about 6 tiers. And what I'm going to do, if you look here, is just cut it off above these top 2, just like that. Take that off there. And we know that they trained their espaliers on wooden frameworks against that wall, and in time it would cover the whole of this wall, and just 1 tree would be enough to produce a couple of bowls of really delicious apples.
As the box hedging continues on the second terrace, everyone is helping out, including the owner's daughter, Isabel.
Excellent. Put that in there then. I tell you what, you could be sort of box guardian, couldn't you? And you could choose the box plant that goes in next. Look.
After 3 wet, cold, grey days, the sun finally puts in an appearance, and we get some much-needed help with the top terrace planting.
Robin, what have we got here?
A nice selection of historical clematis, various introductions from the late 1500s. So basically European species. We've got Viticella here, which is a climbing species from southern Europe, and really a lovely combination with the red brickwork as well. Always gives a lovely effect against the red
So
brick.
what's the general colour scheme you've got with your clematis here?
Rector has got very small white scented flowers all through the summer. Integrifolia has got nodding purpley blue flowers, again during the summer, and they're very sweetly scented as well. Viticella is a nice deep purple. And the real surprise is this one here, which has gone under various names during its history. It seemed to be lost to cultivation for quite a few years, but in 1981 it was rediscovered by a chap called Barry Fretwell down in Devon. And he did actually rename it Mary Rose when he reintroduced it after Henry VIII's flagship. So there's a nice nautical theme there to tie in with the area we're in.
For a final touch to pull the whole scheme together, Anne-Marie has one last idea.
One of the researchers, Michael, went off to Greenwich and actually sketched the seat, the original seat that would have been here.
From the model?
Absolutely, from the model. So that's what it would have been, and it's a lovely piece of work, isn't it?
Made out of what?
Timber,
So
possibly
why
oak.
haven't we got a timber seat here?
Well, for us to build a timber seat of that quality in 5 days would be absurd. So we're going to take our time with it, do it properly, and put it in later on.
Right. That makes sense. But it would sit just where we're sitting now. This is where they'd sit, looking over the garden.
Absolutely.
And as the day finally comes to an end, it looks as though we've made it.
Well, I actually came up here at first light about 6:15 this morning, and I had my doubts as to whether it was going to be completed by this evening. I thought you might just leave me with a few sacks of gravel and a spade and leave me to finish it off myself, but it's all come together extremely well.
So, from our neglected, overgrown plot of land in Chatham Dockyard, we've reclaimed a beautiful Georgian garden, which will truly come into its own in the summer. A couple of months have passed, and the simple beauty of our planting plan is revealed. The formality that is the cornerstone of the Georgian town garden is reflected in the neat rolled gravel paths and the strict symmetrical layouts of the beds. The lines of box hedging help contain the soil, which to our 21st century eyes may look sparsely planted, but is totally in keeping with the 18th century style that we've restored. The expanse of soil on show is both highlighted and softened by the occasional bursts of colour. The vibrant shades of delphiniums are complemented by the rich purples of the garden pansies. And foxgloves range from dusky pinks through to lilac and white and glow against the greens of the structural plants. The fan-like shapes of our fruit trees are spreading across the old walls. Cherries ripen in the sun. Our fig trees are flourishing. And against the new brickwork, my espaliered Ellison's orange is already bearing fruit. On the lower terrace, the passion flower is just beginning to intertwine with the trellis work of our structure. And our box cones are surrounded by an aromatic collection of ornamental roses, adding a soft colour. Our bed of lavender and Santolina, which was so carefully counted out, is flowering beautifully, whilst maintaining its strict geometric pattern. Banks of feverfew enrich the colours of the new walls. And finally, we have our seat, beautifully constructed here at Chatham Dockyard, using reclaimed ship timbers and built to last for centuries. We may never know how many powerful officers of the terrace would have sought peace and tranquility in our 18th century town garden, but one thing is certain. Restoring it has created a place that will once again give pleasure today and for many years to come.
It's 10 years on from the original Classic 100, and have our tastes changed in all that time? All will be revealed in the Classic 100 10 years on. Over 9 days you'll hear all the music you love when the countdown commences this Saturday morning at 10, only on ABC Classic FM.